My name is Daniel Carter, and this story happened in America, in the city of Boston. I live in a quiet neighborhood called Oak Ridge Street, where the houses are close together and the trees are tall and old. My house is not very large, but it is comfortable and peaceful. I bought it myself after many years of working hard and saving money. The walls are painted light gray, the living room has a simple brown couch, and there is a small wooden table near the window where I drink my coffee every morning. I always liked living a simple life, even after my business in New York started making good money. My family, however, lives very differently. My sister, Olivia Carter, lives across the city in a large white house with a long driveway and a big garden. She has always liked expensive things and enjoys showing people that she has money and influence. Our parents, Robert and Elaine Carter, often praise her and support her decisions. Growing up, Olivia was always the center of attention, and she liked it that way. I learned early that it was easier to stay quiet and focus on my own path. One evening, while I was finishing some work at home, my phone rang. When I looked at the screen, I saw Olivia's name. That alone surprised me because she rarely called unless she needed something. When I answered, her voice sounded unusually cheerful. She told me that the whole family was meeting the next night for a big dinner at a place called the Golden Crest Restaurant in downtown Boston. She said everyone would be there and that it would be a special evening for the family. At first I hesitated. Olivia and I were never very close, and our conversations often felt uncomfortable. Still, part of me hoped that maybe she wanted to improve things between us. So after a short pause, I agreed to come. She sounded very pleased when I said yes. The next evening I drove to the restaurant. The Golden Crest was one of the most expensive places in the city, with tall glass doors, warm golden lights, and elegant decorations inside. When I walked in, I saw a large table already full of people. My parents, my cousin Marcus, my Aunt Helen, and a few of Olivia's friends. And sitting quietly near the end of the table was Wendy, the girl my parents adopted many years ago, smiling gently as I arrived. I had no idea that this dinner would soon turn into something none of us would forget. When I sat down at the long table in the Golden Crest restaurant, I could feel that the evening was going to be strange. The table was large, covered with a white cloth and shining silver plates. Tall candles burned slowly in the middle, giving the whole room a warm golden light. Around me sat my family and a few of Olivia's friends. My parents, Robert and Elaine Carter, were talking with my Aunt Helen. My cousin Marcus was laughing loudly with a man named Edward, and across from them sat Clara, one of Olivia's close friends. Olivia herself was sitting at the center of the table like a host at an important event. She wore a bright red dress and expensive jewelry that sparkled under the lights. When she saw me sit down, she smiled widely. "Daniel finally made it," she said loudly, so everyone could hear. "Now the evening can begin." Some people laughed politely. Beside me sat Wendy. She wore a simple blue dress and looked a little nervous. Wendy had been adopted by my parents when we were both young. She grew up in the same house as Olivia and me, but Olivia had never truly accepted her as part of the family. I always felt that Wendy tried very hard to be kind to everyone, even when people treated her unfairly. "I'm glad you came," Wendy said quietly to me. "Me too," I replied, giving her a small smile. Soon the waiters began bringing menus and drinks. Olivia waved her hand confidently. "Order whatever you want," she told everyone. "Tonight we are celebrating family." People did not hesitate. Marcus ordered the most expensive steak on the menu. Edward asked for seafood and wine that cost hundreds of dollars. Clara chose several appetizers and desserts before the main course even arrived. My father ordered rare steak and wine as well, and my Aunt Helen added more dishes for the table. I noticed something strange during the dinner. Olivia kept encouraging people to order more food. "Try the lobster," she said at one point. "It's amazing here." A few minutes later she added, "Oh, and the chocolate cake is famous. We should get several." The table slowly filled with plates of expensive food. The smell of steak, butter, and spices filled the air. Waiters came and went again and again, bringing more dishes and pouring more wine. Everyone seemed relaxed and happy. Everyone except Wendy. She mostly stayed quiet, eating slowly and politely. Sometimes she tried to join the conversation, but Olivia or one of her friends quickly changed the topic. I could see Wendy's smile fading little by little. At one moment Marcus began telling a loud story about a vacation in Europe, laughing about how much money he spent in a single weekend. "I must have spent at least $20,000, he said proudly. "But it was worth it." Edward laughed. "That's nothing. Last year I spent nearly £15,000 on one trip alone." Everyone seemed impressed. Wendy stayed silent. I leaned slightly toward her. "Are you all right?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "I'm fine. I'm used to it." Her answer made me feel uneasy. The dinner continued for nearly 2 hours. Plates were replaced again and again. More wine bottles appeared. By the end, the table looked like the remains of a huge celebration. Then Olivia suddenly stood up. She lifted her glass and gently tapped it with a spoon. Clink. The small sound made everyone stop talking. Slowly, all eyes turned toward her. Olivia smiled confidently, enjoying the attention. "Everyone," she said warmly, raising her glass higher. "Before we finish tonight, I want to make a toast." People quickly picked up their glasses. "To family," Olivia continued proudly. The room felt calm and friendly for a moment. Then Olivia turned her head toward Wendy. Her smile changed slightly. "Except for Wendy," she added lightly, almost as if it were a joke. "She's just the adopted one." For a second the room became completely silent. Then someone laughed. Marcus laughed first. Clara followed. Edward chuckled quietly. Even my father gave a small, uncomfortable smile. The laughter spread around the table like a careless wave. But Wendy didn't laugh. She froze. Her eyes dropped slowly to the table, and her hands tightened around her glass. I could see the color leave her face. The moment felt heavy and ugly. I felt anger rising inside me, but before I could say anything, a waiter walked toward the table holding a small black folder. He stopped beside me and spoke politely. "Excuse me, sir," he said. Then he placed the folder in front of me. I opened it slowly. Inside was the bill. And when I saw the number written at the bottom, my eyes stopped for a moment. The total was $110,370. Suddenly everything about the evening started to make sense. Olivia encouraging everyone to order anything they wanted. The expensive food. The endless bottles of wine. I slowly closed the folder and looked up. Olivia was watching me very carefully, and she was smiling. For a few seconds I simply stared at the number on the bill. $110,370. The amount looked unreal, like something that belonged to a movie instead of a dinner table. I slowly closed the black folder and rested my hands on it while everyone continued talking and laughing, unaware of what I had just seen. But I knew something was wrong. When I looked up, I noticed Olivia watching me from across the table. Her smile was calm, but there was something sharp behind it, like she was waiting for a reaction. Suddenly the whole evening started to make sense in my mind. The way she kept telling everyone to order more food. The expensive wine bottles. The desserts. The seafood. It wasn't just a family dinner. It was a trap. Olivia leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, pretending to be relaxed. "So, Daniel," she said casually, loud enough for everyone to hear, "your company in New York is doing very well these days, right?" Several people at the table turned their heads toward me. Marcus raised his eyebrows. "Yeah, I heard you've been making serious money." Clara smiled politely. "Business must be good." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I slowly slid the black folder across the table toward Olivia. "Try your card," I said calmly. "You booked the table under your name." The words landed on the table like a stone dropping into water. The smiles disappeared. Olivia blinked. "What?" "The reservation," I continued quietly. "It's under Olivia Carter. That means the host pays." For a moment she didn't speak. The confident look on her face slowly faded. I could see the color draining from her cheeks. "Well, she began, suddenly nervous. "That's not exactly what I meant." The waiter was still standing nearby. waiting patiently. He looked between us, unsure of what was happening. "Miss Carter," he said politely, "the reservation is indeed under your name." A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My father cleared his throat. Marcus looked down at the table. Olivia quickly grabbed her purse from the side of her chair and pulled out a credit card. Her fingers were slightly shaking now. "Here," she said quickly, handing the card to the waiter. "Run this." The waiter nodded and walked away. The table became very quiet. Wendy sat beside me without moving. She still hadn't spoken since Olivia's cruel toast earlier. Her eyes remained fixed on the tablecloth. A minute later the waiter returned. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter," he said carefully. The card was declined. The silence that followed felt even heavier. Olivia's eyes widened. "That's impossible," she said quickly. "There must be a mistake." She searched through her purse again and pulled out another card. "Try this one." The waiter took it and left again. Marcus leaned toward Olivia and whispered something, but she shook her head quickly, clearly stressed. When the waiter came back, his expression looked even more uncomfortable. "I'm very sorry," he said. This card was also declined. Now Olivia's face had turned completely pale. She looked around the table as if hoping someone would save her. But nobody spoke. Clara stared at her glass. Edward pretended to check his phone. My parents looked worried but said nothing. Finally my father leaned toward me slightly. "Daniel," he whispered, "maybe you should just take care of it." I looked at him. The same father who had laughed when Wendy was humiliated only minutes ago. I shook my head slowly. "This dinner wasn't my idea," I said quietly. At that moment a tall man in a dark suit approached the table. His name tag read Jonathan Reed. He was the restaurant manager. "Good evening," he said calmly. "I understand there may be a small issue with the payment." Olivia forced a nervous smile. "Yes, just a small problem," she said quickly. "My card should work." Mr. Reed nodded politely. "Of course. However, the total amount tonight is $110,370, and we do need to settle the payment before closing." Olivia looked directly at me now. "Daniel," she said softly, almost pleading, "you can just pay it and we'll deal with it later." I met her eyes. For the first time that night, her confidence was gone. I leaned back in my chair and spoke calmly. "You invited everyone," I said. "You told them to order anything they wanted. Nobody at the table moved. And you laughed when Wendy was insulted," I added quietly. Olivia didn't respond. Mr. Reed folded his hands politely and looked at her. "Miss Carter," he said, "how would you like to proceed?" The entire table waited for her answer. For a long moment, nobody at the table spoke. The soft music of the restaurant continued in the background, and other guests around us were enjoying their meals, completely unaware of the tension at our table. But for us, time felt slow and heavy. Olivia sat frozen in her chair. The confident smile she had worn all evening was completely gone now. Her hands were resting on the table, and I could see that her fingers were trembling slightly. She looked around at everyone as if searching for someone who might rescue her from the situation. But no one moved. Marcus suddenly seemed very interested in the empty plate in front of him. Clara quietly adjusted her glass. Edward looked down at his phone again. My parents sat silently, clearly uncomfortable. The manager, Mr. Jonathan Reed, stood beside the table with calm patience. He had likely seen many difficult situations in this restaurant before, but his voice remained polite and professional. "Miss Carter," he said again gently, "how would you like to proceed with the payment?" Olivia swallowed hard. "There must be some mistake," she said nervously. "Maybe the bank blocked my cards." Mr. Reed nodded slightly. "That can happen sometimes. If you have another method of payment, we can try again." Olivia slowly opened her purse again, even though it was clear she had already used every card she had. She searched through it anyway, hoping for some solution that wasn't there. Then she looked up at me. "Daniel," she said quietly, almost whispering now, "please, just pay it. You can afford it." Her voice sounded completely different from earlier. The pride was gone. The confidence was gone. All that remained was desperation. I looked at her calmly. You invited everyone, I said. You encouraged them to order the most expensive food in the restaurant. She said nothing. You planned this, I continued. You expected me to pay for it. Olivia looked down at the table. My father finally spoke. Daniel, he said carefully, maybe we should just handle this as a family. I turned my head and looked at him. A family. I repeated. My eyes slowly moved across the table until they stopped on Wendy. She was still sitting quietly beside me, her hands folded in her lap. She had barely spoken the entire night. The earlier laughter after Olivia's cruel toast still hung in the air like something ugly that nobody wanted to admit. I turned back toward my father. Where was this family a few minutes ago? I asked quietly. Nobody answered. Mr. Reed waited patiently, giving Olivia time to think. Finally, she took a deep breath. I might need to call someone, she said weakly. That's perfectly fine, the manager replied. You can step to the front desk if you'd like. Olivia slowly stood up from her chair. The strong, confident woman who had stood earlier to make a proud toast was gone. Now she looked small and embarrassed. As she walked toward the front of the restaurant with the manager, the rest of the table remained silent. A moment later, Wendy gently pushed her chair back. Daniel, she said softly, I think we should go. I looked at her. You don't want to stay? I asked. She shook her head slightly. I've had enough dinners like this, she said with a small, tired smile. I nodded. We both stood up from the table. My mother looked surprised. You're leaving? Yes, I replied simply. No one tried to stop us. Wendy and I walked slowly through the restaurant toward the exit. The warm lights of the dining room reflected on the polished floor, and quiet conversations continued at other tables as if nothing unusual had happened. Just before we reached the door, Wendy stopped for a moment. Daniel, she said. I turned to her. Thank you. For what? I asked. She looked back toward the table where the rest of the family still sat. For not laughing, she said. Her words were simple, but they meant more than anything else that night. We stepped outside into the cool Boston night air. The street was quiet, and the city lights reflected softly on the pavement. After the heavy atmosphere inside the restaurant, the fresh air felt almost peaceful. For a moment we both stood there without speaking. Then Wendy smiled a little. You know, she said, sometimes the people who share your house are not really your family. I thought about that. Then I nodded slowly. Sometimes, I replied, the person everyone calls the adopted one is the only real family you have. And as we walked away from the restaurant together, I realized that some lessons about family come in the most unexpected and expensive ways.